Firstly, a very warm welcome and thank you very much for coming. I'm just going to briefly run through why we're doing this event, how it's going to run, and then I'm going to hand over to Ala to give a quick talk about the Interfaith Association in general. So, many of you might be aware that the Interfaith Association was set up around this time last year, and this is the first event of many, hopefully, around this theme, and it's aimed at bringing people together over the topic of interfaith. The format of the event will be broadly question time. There are some pre-submitted questions which are within the audience, and there'll be a 2-minute speech from panellists who I'll select from my list here, and they will have 2 minutes to answer the questions. For the panellists, when you have 30 seconds remaining, I will tap the table, so please try and wrap up your speech and then bring it to an end at 2 minutes. And then at the end of the pre-submitted questions, there will be an opportunity for questions from the floor, which you can write down on your slips of paper, which should be in front of you. Slide. Have I got? Brilliant. Okay, just a few things to run through. Why are we doing this event? Is to provide a safe space for critical thought and a platform for students to raise a wide number of issues. Please try and keep that in mind when you are asking your questions, that this is a safe space, so please be mindful of the other people that are in the room. And it's about supporting the trend for collaborative work on campus. The whole point of Interfaith is about collaboration and working together over common issues on campus in University of Birmingham. It's about drawing on the perspectives and experiences from experts, that's our panellists, and you, the students. It's about making links to further develop interfaith on campus, and it's about providing opportunities for sharing thought between staff and students at the University of Birmingham. I'm just going to now introduce the panellists. Can I start with Rabbi Nathan Levy? Have I pronounced that correctly? Brilliant. Just a bit of background on everyone. He is the rabbi of Shenley United Synagogue. He grew up in Berkeley, California. I come across as a stalker a little bit in this. From 2005 to 2008, he served as the Jewish campus chaplain for the southwest of England and Wales. In 2009, he was appointed as the environmental liaison to the Chief Rabbi's office. Rabbi Levy lives with his wife, Ariella, and their 3 young children in Shenley Village. Next is Cara Cooper, Reverend Cara Cooper. Sorry, I have to get the title in there. Cara did her undergraduate degree in English literature at the College of William and Mary in Virginia. She went on to do her master's degree in theology at Duke University in North Carolina. She moved to England in 2002 to serve the Methodist Church in Bournemouth. Cara has ordained at Methodist, you can tell I didn't write this, at Methodist Conference in Loughborough in 2004, and is now the newest member of the University of Birmingham chaplaincy team since September 2007. And my immediate right is Dr. No, that's not right. It's Professor Sharada, I'm going to do my best with this one, Sugiratha Araja. Good. Sharada is a senior lecturer in Hindu studies. She taught in India before embarking on her academic career at the University of Birmingham in the mid-1990s. She acted as a consultant to various RE projects, the recent being the Warwick RE research project conducted for DCSF. Is that something?
It's not the one like it's for the government.
Okay.
For children, sort of children families. I think it includes national.
Okay, just to put you on the spot there. And she's also on the International Editorial Board for the Journal of Feminist Studies in Religion. To my immediate left is Mr. Afzal Shah. Afzal is the former president of the Islamic Society here at Birmingham and is currently on a gap year in the History Department at the University of Birmingham. And finally on my left is Dr. Sorry, I have to amend that one. Samira Holland. Dr. Samira is a senior clinical lecturer at the University of Birmingham Medical School. She is based in the medical faculty and engages with the Baha'i Society on campus for activities and support. So thank you very much to all the panellists for coming along. Hopefully that gave you a brief insight into their backgrounds. Okay. Next slide. Just the run plan, we're going to start with a welcome from the Interfaith Association, and I'll hand over to you in a second. Then we're going to move on to questions and discussions with the panellists. There'll be then questions from the floor, and following the event will be an interfaith cafe and lunch, and an opportunity for you to discuss how you think the event's gone and to do some networking. So I'll hand over to Anna from the Interfaith Association.
Ladies and gentlemen, peace be with you all, and as founding chair of the Interfaith Association, I'd like to warmly welcome you to Mythbusters. It's an event that is making history on the University of Birmingham, and each one of you should know that you're actually making history on this campus. For the first time ever on our campus, a variety of students, including Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Baha'i and Atheist and loads more, have come together with support of the Campusalam Project, which I have to mention, to explore commonly held conceptions about faith identities and lifestyles. I would personally like to give a sincere thank you to everyone who has contributed in any way to this event, and to applaud the efforts of the promotions, organisational and productions team. You all know who you are. Without you, this event would have not ever been achievable. The zeal and enthusiasm and positive energy that I saw when we were organising this event has really shown to me the potential on this campus. It's asserted to me that we are now witnessing a groundbreaking movement on campus. A movement of increasing dialogue and cooperation, a movement of humanising the other, a movement that will have eternal ripple effects on this campus and in society as a whole for generations to come. And you will be the ones responsible for it. So could everyone please join me in thanking all the organisers and volunteers that helped this event happen. I'd like to open this event by quoting actually one of my most favourite quotes from Interfaith quotes from a book written by someone called Ibn Patel called Acts of Faith. Okay. 100 years ago, the great African-American scholar W.E.B. Du Bois famously said that the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the colour line. I believe that the 21st century will be shaped by the question or the problem of the faith line. On one side of the faith line are the religious totalitarians. Their conviction is that there is only one interpretation of one religion that is a legitimate way of being, believing, or belonging on earth. On the other side of the faith line are the religious pluralists, who hold that people believing in different creeds and belonging to communities need to learn to live together. Religious pluralism is neither mere coexistence nor forced consensus. It is a form of proactive cooperation that affirms the identity of its constituent communities, whilst emphasizing that the well-being of each and all depends on the health of the whole. I feel that we are today embodying the exact words of Ibn Patel through our proactive approach and through our open minds and open hearts. Thank you so much for listening, and I'd like to pass back to Matt Lamb, who's our chairman.
Okay, and can we start by taking the first question from the floor, please? So put your hand up if you've got a question on the floor.
Faith takes precedence over the Lord.
Okay, that was faith takes precedence over the law. And can we start with Nathan for that, please?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm going to speak particularly from Judaism, and not only from Judaism, but from my perspective, which is Orthodox Judaism. So everything I say, there might be another Jew later on who says something different. That's how Judaism works quite often. You know, to say there's lots of different facets, different faces to Judaism. Does faith take precedence over law? First of all, let me say in Judaism that practice is essential. It's not only what you believe, it's what you do. Why is it so essential, what you do? I think I had the story that my rabbi, Rav Kadoza, was sitting in a hotel, and two men came up to him. And these men, their faces were drawn. They had seen something horrible in their lives. And they go up to Rabbi Kadoza, and they say to him, please help us. We see you're a man of faith. We see you're a man of faith. And we were soldiers, in Khmer Rouge, and we killed people. And at first it was difficult. At first it was a challenge. The first person we killed, the second person we killed, we murdered. And after a while, we stopped caring how we killed and how we murdered. And that was many years ago, but we can't let go of that. And we've gone to many faith leaders, and we've come to them and said, what can we do? And they say, change your heart, change your insides, change the way you think about, believe. Change what's happening here. And they said, we tried that, but still, our hands are full of blood. So, Rabbi Cardoza, as a Jew and a rabbi, he said, sometimes it's not what you do here. Sometimes you need to act out and practice. And he said, go today, go to a hospital and help another human being. Go and help. Go and change what you're doing. It may not change your heart immediately, but bit by bit, if you go and you give and you help and you support and you bring life in a place where you had death, action can sometimes change the heart. And as a Jew, we believe that very firmly, that what it takes to change a human being, it's called tshuva, repentance, is not only what's here, but also what you do with your hands and your actions.
Thank you very much. And secondly to Afzal, please. Thank you.
Faith takes precedence over the law. I don't really think this is something which is irreconcilable, in that the law and the faith could be something that go hand in hand, and certainly that's what Islam propagates. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the final prophet of God, after Prophet Jesus and Prophet Moses, we believe that he said, whichever land you live in, abide by the law of the land. Except, of course, if that law of the land is morally incorrect. And I'll give you a very brief example. What Hitler did was legally correct. What Stalin did was also legally correct and legally non-challengeable. However, morally it was challengeable. So the point here is who makes the law. If the law is made such that it goes against the moral rights of man, then of course faith takes precedence. But if the law and the faith are in harmony, then by all means we follow the law.
Thank you very much. Can we have a round of applause for both those questions? Okay, and can we move on to our second question from the floor, please? Okay.
Fundamentalism and extreme beliefs are a feature of all religions.
Okay, that was fundamentalism and extreme beliefs are a feature of all religions. Can I start with Carla on that one, please?
I think that all religions have the possibility to engender fundamentalism and extreme belief, because the question is, where does religion come from? If religion comes from a transformative experience, if one has encountered something that has led to transformation, naturally that leads to a passion for the agent of transformation. And in that passion for the agent of transformation, which many faith practitioners would call God or the religion itself, in that passion there is a desire to get it right. I want to worship God in the right way. I want to do the right things by God. I want to live the way God wants me to. And from that passion can come quite a fundamentalist or extremist view. It is always possible, where passion is involved, to be very dogmatic about things. Anyone who's been in love knows that where passion is involved, it's quite possible to be narrow-minded in focus. I don't think that necessarily fundamentalism and extreme beliefs are necessarily a feature of all religions. I think that all religions have the potential to create that sort of thinking.
Thank you very much. And secondly, from Nathan again, please.
Now, this is clearly not a 2-minute question, is it, or a 2-minute response. What can you possibly say about this? This is a serious issue. An issue that this is a really problematic issue. Where do we start? Would it be nice if we just let religion go, especially in places like the Middle East, where everyone's always fighting and saying, God's behind what I'm doing. I'm making a choice, and God's behind me. And therefore, people have a hard time speaking to each other, relating to each other, having a shared platform. This would be it's difficult to imagine these kinds of things in those kind of places. But I think some people say, get religion out of the equation and things will be okay, is a little bit like saying, well, next time we want to stop tsunamis, just drain all the water in the ocean. It's not might be possible. Well, let me give you a quick analogy. One of the rabbis in the 16th century said like this. He said that religion is a little bit like water. And you can take water and pour it over the human being, the human heart. And if that human heart is a place full of thorns and thistles, what's going to grow? More thorns, bigger thistles, right? A problematic reality. But if that human heart is a place of flowers, and you pour water over that heart, a garden will grow. Religion often is just the water being poured over the heart. Fundamentalism is what's in that heart at the beginning. A lot of that comes up to who we are as human beings. Religion has the power to make that flourish, but it may not be the root of evil, as some would say it is.
Okay, thank you very much. And can we move on to our third question, please? Yeah.
Would you say that interfaith relations are superficial because they have an underlying agenda?
Okay, that was interfaith relations are superficial because they have an underlying agenda. And we'll go back to Cara again for that, please.
None of these are 2-minute questions. I think. Again, interfaith relations can often feel like there is an underlying agenda. Here, let me talk with someone of another faith so that I can convert you, so that I can show you the true way to be. It can feel that that's what interfaith dialogue is about. But I don't think that's what true interfaith dialogue is meant to be. I think that interfaith dialogue is meant to be an opportunity to learn from one another, to learn from different practices, to learn different ways of encountering God. My next door neighbor is a Muslim and is one of the holiest men I've ever met in my life. And every time I'm invited to dinner with him and his family, I think I have so much to learn from you. I have so much to learn about how you experience God. I have so much to learn about the language you use for God. Now, our relationship is because he's my neighbor. And neither of us have set out to say, here, let me convert you. He knows that he's not going to convert me. I know I'm not going to convert him. With that freedom, we have an amazing ability to share honestly and openly. I think that genuine interfaith dialogue requires one to be secure in one's own thinking. This is what I believe. But also to have an open-mindedness to say, I will listen to what you believe. I will learn from you. It requires a vulnerability, which most of us are not good at, to put ourselves in a vulnerable position where we might be challenged. It requires a leap of faith to trust that the other person wishes to engage in dialogue from the same level. That's not at all distracting. I think that interfaith dialogue can feel as if there's an agenda, but if we can get beyond that, then not only can we bolster the interfaith dialogue, I think that we each can learn so much about our own faith traditions from the experience and expression of others.
Okay, thank you very much. And back to Nathan, please.
There's always the challenge in interfaith. I think Cara picked up on this. To try to make one's own religion look really good. I want everyone to walk away thinking Judaism is really good looking religion. Who would want otherwise? That's a difficulty and a problem. And part of what I imagine is the best part of what we're going to do today has nothing to do with our illustrious panel, as good as this will be, but it will be between you all. You can see already in the room, people are sitting in the kind of group they came in with. Instead of like an Arsenal match where you sit with the team you support. And, if it's been good, people should be cheering at this moment for that team. But what will really happen is when we break free from those little clusters and we go to the people who are very much not like us and begin to speak to them and talk to them. So whatever we're going to say now won't really be the final say on how interfaith goes. It'll be up to you, the final say on how interfaith goes. This actually reminds me of another story. Rabbis, you can see, are very good at telling stories. Maybe they haven't pointed out. Quick story about a colleague of mine, a rabbi. He was living in New Orleans, and his community was destroyed. The synagogue was destroyed. The basement was ruined. And he calls all his community together and says, friends, I have some very bad news, some good news, and then some bad news again. The bad news is during the Katrina hurricane, our whole synagogue is destroyed, down to the ground. The good news is that we have the money to rebuild the entire synagogue. People are very smiling, very happy. The bad news, he said, is that the money to rebuild it is in your pockets right now. When it comes to interfaith, the real work, the bad news, no matter how good we do, is it's in your pockets right now to make the interfaith really happen.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, I was reading a note. Okay, thank you very much. I need my clapping there. Can we have the fourth question from the floor, please?
Islam is the fastest growing religion today. Why?
Afzal, would you like to take that first, please? That was Islam is the fastest growing religion today, and why?
Much of a thesis, really, but I'll try my best. I think I'll just rattle off on some main reasons. Quranic morality, scientifically proven correct. Literary superiority. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, being somebody who is an orphan, who is illiterate, a person living in the desert of Arabia, coming up with, if it really is that, coming up with something, that's absolutely divine. Human psyche, concept of brotherhood, both in humanity and within the religion. It's very easy to become a Muslim. Just a simple utterance says no God, but the one and only God, Allah, and the Prophet is His messenger. We believe in all of the prophets, including Moses, Jesus, and Adam. We believe in the oneness of God. It's a socio-political economic system where there's a very comprehensive marriage between socialism and capitalism, the best of both worlds. It's very logical, it's very practical in its aspects of brotherhood, where it doesn't see any limits of race, culture, any other type of background, ethnicity, etc. And one very important quote that I'd like to mention, if I can get it here somewhere, is from George Bernard Shaw. Should be here somewhere. Got it. Okay. I have always held the religion of Muhammad in high estimation because of its wonderful vitality. It is the only religion which appears to me to possess that assimilating capacity to the changing phase of existence which can make itself appeal to every age. I have studied him, the wonderful man, and in my opinion, far from being an antichrist, he must be called the saviour of humanity. I believe that if a man like him were to assume the dictatorship of the modern world, he would succeed in solving its problems in a way that would bring it the much-needed happiness and peace. I have prophesied about the faith of Muhammad that it would be acceptable to the Europe of tomorrow as it is beginning to be acceptable to the Europe of today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's only one person. Can we have the fifth question from the floor, please? Go for it.
I didn't write this, and I can't read writing, but religion harms society more than it helps.
Okay, so that was religion harms society more than it helps. And can I give that to Samira, please?
Thank you very much. I'm going to start with a thesis, if you like. I'll finish in my next question, which I think is coming up. So maybe wait for part two then. But from the Baha'is' point of view, actually religion has a purpose throughout history, from beginning of history, and it will do continually. And that every religion has had actually one purpose, and one purpose and two arms. One is obviously to help the individual to be a better person and to contribute to the family and society and gain some kind of spiritual salvation, as some call it. And the other, actually, as a combination of those individuals coming together, is to contribute to an ever-advancing civilization. And that is the purpose of religion as Baha'is see it. And people's benefit, if you like, individuals' benefit, is secondary to that. So why is that, and how does that relate to this question? And I think the issue there is that it is the religion taken out of context and in a negative way, if you like, abuse of religion, which has led to these kind of perceptions and understandings, and clearly harm done in the name of religion, as Rabbi described some good examples that we may, ways of understanding this. And I think the issue here, the Baha'is would say that there is only one God, and that there is a system in the way religion is revealed throughout history, that from beginning of time that we even don't have any knowledge of, there have been messengers, prophets, whatever you like to call them, sent from this one God. And the purpose of religion has been always the same, but because of the history that we have had, they have often come to different people, to different time in history, and different needs and requirements. And therefore, some of the teachings are not the same. And this can produce a conflict, but only when people choose to take those differences as the primary issue. So one example I like to give is, I'm a medic, so I'm simple-minded. If you think of a good food, if you have a big roast, Sunday roast, it's very nutritious, lots of protein and good vitamins and things in it, and then you have a humble piece of bread with butter on it. You leave your white bread with butter on the windowsill and you leave your roast on the windowsill. In a day's time, in about 3 days' time, if you eat the roast, the chance that you get salmonella. If you eat the bread, you'll probably get antibiotics and probably heal something. So the issue is there that religion is actually a very powerful tool. Like I think you were saying, they can be taken as a tool that can harm or benefit. And if you look throughout history, we have a very blinkered view sometimes. We look at news and our personal experiences. But if you look at history, there are many great civilizations based on religions. Actually, most civilizations would not have come about if it wasn't for some religion that they were based on. Like Persian Empire was based on Zoroastrianism. How many of you know much about Zoroastrianism? Or the Islamic religion. The first universities, we're in a university here, were Islamic. Christian sciences, the Buddhist history and civilization. So actually, religion can be a great source of progress when it's applied correctly, and the spirit of the age that it's come for is in play. However, if you take it out of context and our own selfish desires come into play, and we take the differences rather than similarities, then that's where the problems come in. So this process, Baha'i is called progressive revelation, as in God, the single God, no matter what you call him, Allah, Buddha, whatever you want to call him, is actually the same for everybody, and that this process of progressive revelation is revealed unto humanity from beginning of time, aiming to progress mankind. And I'm going to go on till you stop me, but I think the time has passed. I'm going to tell the rest in the next minute.
There we go.
Give me a few more minutes and then we go.
Okay.
The next question, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I continue to the next question.
Well, can we have the next question from the floor, please?
The Baha'i faith is just a mix of all religions already existing.
Thank you. So that basically... Here we are, I'll continue part two. So this actually comes from this same issue that often is misunderstood, this concept of progressive revelation. So to complete the story, Baha'is believe that this God sends, if you like, this progressive revelation in this form, in that every religion has something similar across all of them, if you like, the golden rule, the golden thread. So what are they? Every religion prays. No matter what kind of religion, even if you're, some American Indian religion, you still pray. Doesn't matter whether it's on your head or sitting or standing. Every religion says there's something within you, you call it soul or spirit or something, and that thing lives on. Now, however it lives on may be different, but actually, whether you're good, it will be good, and if you're bad, it will be bad in the next life. The implications are the same, whether you believe in reincarnation or hell and heaven. And there are practical things like be good to your brother, don't kill, don't steal, don't lie. Those are all the same. We don't talk about similarities too often. There are differences. Differences can be practical, like how many wives you should have and what you should eat and what you should dress. Those are cultural, they're time-dependent and people-dependent. And there are also other things that are different, such as what is God or what is soul. And quite clearly they would be different because those are also esoteric and different within, if you like, context of the cultural background of people. So Baha'is wouldn't see those different explanations as being a problem. In fact, there is a very interesting analogy that we use, I think you could relate to, is that of school. So if you see the Almighty God, or whatever you want to call him, as the headmaster, setting the curriculum, and if you like, agreeing with the teachers what they should teach, and all these teachers being the great religious leaders, or prophets, or messengers, again, whatever you want to label your founder of your faith, then that teacher, actually all the teachers at school have the same degree, same qualifications, they cannot be teachers otherwise. same with all these great messengers. They have the same, if you like, essence. But what they teach and communicate is dependent on the people that they come to, the same as the teacher. So the teacher will not teach a 6-year-old the same as an 18-year-old. So if you're studying maths, and your teacher teaches you 2 plus 3 is 5, and then at A-level you learn algebra and geometry, your 6-year-old cannot turn around and say the teacher at A-level is stupid because he's talking gobbledygook, and the student at A-level turn around and say the teacher at year 6 must be stupid, just teaches 2 plus 3 is 5. Actually, they build on each other. They are the essence of what that student had to learn until he got there. Now, this is why, going back to your question, why do people say Baha'i faith is a combination of different religions? It's because they misunderstand this. Baha'is, in essence, believe all religions are from God and that they have similarities. And Baha'is, just like others, pray, so there are similarities. They believe life after death and various other things. The details are, however, different, and Baha'is do have a new messenger, and Baha'is would say, if you take this progressive revelation, then Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, is the latest of those great messengers from God, and has teachings that are particularly relevant to this day and age. And in that, actually, if people are interested in this question, read the Baha'i writings, they see that there are very many numerous examples of differences, but not that differences are important, but applications of religious truths in today's day and age, and explanations that are more, if you like, for the world that we're in. And so that basically, I would like to say, is a misunderstanding of the principle of progressive revelation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next question from the floor, please.
Religious groups are isolationist in nature and do not want to integrate into British society.
So that was religious groups are isolationist in nature and do not want to integrate into British society. Afzal, do you want to start that, please?
Yeah. I believe it's really a question of having a comfort zone and a question of differences and similarities. Human nature is generally that birds of a feather shall flock together. You know, it's more comfortable for humans to associate with those kind of people that they feel they're similar to, because that then gives them some kind of a community, some kind of an eligibility where they can feel very comfortable within that particular group. And I believe that it's really conversation that can build that understanding, build those bridges, remove those barriers, and try to look through that and see that the thing that links us all, the common thread between all of us, is humanity. And that's the thing that, you know, is really something that we should be building on as the human race. Furthermore, I was listening to a Radio 4 program just before I came in, and one of the kind of points that the presenter was mentioning was this idea of similarities and differences, and scientifically it's proven if there was a clone exactly same genetically to somebody else, there would still be differences because of the way that person would experience the world to the original person. So it's really a matter of seeing the similarities as opposed to differences, and both similarities and differences will most surely be present.
Thank you very much. And Sharada, can you answer that as well, please?
Well, I think this question cannot be generalized in my view, and there are various factors which will have to be taken into consideration, questions of race and class. I do agree to some extent with what you said, that there are differences and similarities, but I think the other factors will have to be taken into consideration. But if you take, say, for example, within the Hindu communities, speaking about to what extent Hindus can integrate into British society, there's a question of the language barrier for older generation Hindus and for other Indians. So integrating within the Hindu community itself becomes a problem because of language. So I'm alerting to that problem, even integrating within the community. So there are certain, and of course, English society is no doubt to some extent class-ridden society. So it's not always easy to cut across barriers of class and caste.
Okay, thank you very much. Can we have the next question from the floor, please? I can't remember what number it was. 7.
Islam, Christianity and Judaism have more similarities than differences. Despite this, why have they got so much conflict between these religions?
Was that one of the pre-submitted questions? Have you written it yourself?
That's really mine.
Has anyone got one of the pre-submitted questions? Yeah.
Can you just believe in thousands of gods?
That's the one.
I often get asked this particular question, which is understandable if the Hindu gods and goddesses are mind-boggling. But perhaps what we have to realize here is Hinduism is a very diverse tradition with diverse beliefs and practices. And what we need to remember is oneness is the basis of multiplicity. That's the starting, philosophically, that is the starting point to answer this particular question. There are many views within the tradition. Most Hindus would consider the many gods and goddesses as being different attributes of the one being which is beyond all thought and formulation, so to speak, beyond all words. So these attributes, different attributes, symbolize love, justice, compassion, mercy, and knowledge. It's possible to approach the one without thinking of these attributes, or it's possible to approach the one through these various attributes. And of course, these various attributes will have to be concretized or personified, and therefore you find the icons within the Hindu tradition symbolizing the various attributes. For example, the goddess of knowledge is Saraswati, and Hindus would worship the goddess of knowledge on her special day. But also I must remind here, these attributes do not in any way exhaust the divine. The sum of attributes, it's more our way of relating to the absolute, which cannot be named, which cannot be described. The unknown is unknowable in one sense. To a great extent, on one level, we are speaking about our relationship with the divine, and we're using human categories to explain the content of the divine, so to speak, as love, mercy, whatever the case may be. So to a great extent, either you can look at the divine from the human end, how we approach, or you can approach the divine from the metaphysical end, where most traditions would perhaps, there's a cognitive element to the metaphysical approach, in the sense that you have a doctrinal formulation of the absolute, and then you work your way down. So in Hinduism, you can work both ways, so to speak. The divine is one beyond everything. We tend to use negatives, saying the divine is neti, not this, meaning the divine is more than what we can perceive. Stop.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry for the confusion there. We are still taking pre-submitted questions, and then we will take questions from the floor in a moment. Can I have the final pre-submitted question, please? Anyone? In that case, I will read the pre-submitted question. The pre-submitted question is, religious people with exclusive truth claims do not see people from other religions as equal. And would you like to say that, please?
Well, this is a loaded question, I think. First of all, the question is whether theological exclusiveness, whether that implies that others are equal. And it's not a very easy question to answer. A lot of things will have to be unpacked. And of course, there are different kinds of exclusiveness. When we use the word exclusive claims, what comes to my mind, three things come to my mind. One is that the moment we make exclusive claims about anything, whether it be God or about civilization or about anything, in that particular claim is embedded notions of superiority. There's some kind of inherent affirmation of mine is superior. I may not say it openly, but it's implied. And also it implies the idea of being privileged by God or whatever the case may be. The idea of chosenness comes into the equation here. And then also the idea of being saved. So there are three components to this notion of exclusiveness. But that's how I perceive it. My other question is, if all of us are equal in the sight of the divine or the unknown or God, whatever we want to call it, then the whole question of exclusiveness has no place in our thinking, in our formulation. So therefore, there's something fundamentally wrong when we make exclusive claims. Basically, we are questioning God in one sense, that God can have, God is the privilege, God is the God of the minority.
Okay, thank you. That brings the end to the pre-submitted questions. If any of you have any questions you would like to ask the panellists, please could you write them down on a piece of paper. I've got a few already, and someone will come around to collect those, or if you want to just bring them to the front. So I'll just get around 30 seconds to do that. Okay, I'm going to read out the question. If any of you feel a particular passion to answer that one, please go for it. If not, I will be picking on someone. The first pre-submitted question is, what does faith do for real issues such as climate change? Anyone? Yeah?
I actually do feel passionate about this because I think this is probably, well, not just people with faith, but for all of us, probably one of the most serious issues that we should be looking at in our time, for our age. And I think when our children look back at us, they will ask us this question: what did you do for climate change? In particular, I'm going to quote the this is the Interfaith. I'm going to quote the Archbishop of Canterbury, who said, because climate issues and the environment in general is a long-term game, politicians can't handle it. Politicians have 5-year plans. Maybe if we're lucky, 10-year plans, but they'll be out of power. Somebody else will be in power then. For better or for worse, he said, most religious leaders can't be fired from their jobs. And therefore, he said that we think long-term. Our religions are long-term. You know, even the youngest religion here is thinking in terms of thousands of years. That's a kind of thought, the kind of way we should be creating plans for our future and our children's future and our grandchildren's future. Being a religious individual, person of faith, often means being sustainable. And that, I think, is the key to how we think about climate change.
Okay, thank you very much. Afsal also requested that. Well, I was going to go for 2, so Afsal, would you like to take one first?
Yeah, sorry. Although there's no explicit reference to climate change or global warming within the Quran or within the saying of the Prophet, what we do find within the Quran is that God has said to us, do not upset the equilibrium that I have placed on this earth, within the heavens and within the earth. And when that equilibrium is upset, that's when nature starts freaking, and that's when all these natural disasters start taking place, and climate change and global warming. This is what we're seeing because of this upset of the balance.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question is, faith today must include the faith in science. Anyone want to take that one? Yep, do you want to start?
Yeah, well, I didn't know this was coming up, but it's very pertinent to the Baha'i. It's one of the fundamental beliefs of the Baha'i faith is science and religion, they should be in harmony, and faith and logic should be in harmony. So in that way, we as Baha'is are encouraged to search the truth for ourselves, and we would say that that is the duty of every human being, that God has given us our logic, our brain, and our heart and soul. So in that way, when religion becomes independent of logic and science, it becomes fundamentalist. Going back to that question our colleagues answered. So religion without science is fundamentalist, and science without religion is well, usually a murder, if that's some description or some negative outcome comes from it. So everything in science, and the same with religion, they are tools. For example, atomic energy can be very positive, but if you don't have moral beliefs and you don't value other people and you don't think it is wrong to be using anything to harm others, which usually goes against most religions that exist in the world, all religions, then you would be happy as a scientist to use that to develop something negative. Equally in religion, if you totally divorce yourself from logic and science, then you have the kind of illogical behavior such as, killing yourself oneself to kill others, which is actually forbidden in one's own faith as well. And that isn't a religious behavior. So that is where we had a question before, that religion is bad for society. That's not religion. That's somebody divorcing their belief and their heart and their mind.
Okay, thank you very much. And myself, please. Thank you.
There are numerous references within the Quran explaining, that God says time and time again, do you not use your mind? Do you not ponder? Do you not see this? Do you not hear this? So constantly God is asking us to use our logic, to use our mind. And within the Quran, we have seen that there are so many concepts and so many ideas that have been proven scientifically correct, including astronomical ideas, including concepts in biology, with the fetus development, etc., etc.
Okay, thank you very much. Do any of the other panelists want to take this question? Are we ready to move on? Brilliant. Okay. Our next question is, can atheists have morals? Would you like to take that?
Yes, I suppose they can have more. I think if we define religion in broader categories, as Gandhi had often defined a search for truth, then I think it should be possible, without any problem, to include humanists, agnostics, and atheists in our search for truth, and even secular people. I don't want to sort of draw a distinction between the sacred and the secular in this particular sense. And Gandhi himself, for example, changed his formulation from God is truth. Initially he said God is truth, but when he met up with an atheist called Charles Bradlaugh, he shifted his, he rather changed his formulation from God is truth to truth is God. And he felt that as long as our behavior and actions are sort of regulated by moral behavior and discipline, then we are on the right path. So I would go along with Gandhi and many others who would include atheists and agnostics, not as a kind of inclusiveness, but in their own right to be able to include them in the search for truth. That would be my stance.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to take this question? Karen?
Thanks. I think that it's important to realize that morality is an important part of any faith structure, but it's a part. There's much more to a faith structure, a belief, than just morality. And to reduce a religion or a faith structure to morality alone is to miss huge swathes of what that faith is about. So morality is not the exclusive claim of any particular religion, or in fact of faith in general, but it's also not the only thing that faith is about. So of course, atheists can have morals. Atheists are good and wonderful people who just see the world in a different way to a person of faith.
Thank you very much. The next question is as follows. Islam, Christianity and Judaism have many more similarities than differences. Despite this, why do you believe there is still so much conflict around the world? Who wants to take that one?
Oh, if we could sort that one out.
Bear in mind you've got 2 minutes. Yep.
Yeah, once again. Are there many, many similarities between the 3 Abrahamic faiths, they're called? Yes, we can sit and we share many traditions, many words, many concepts, many ideas. So why can't we all get along, to quote Rodney King? I sometimes think that we should actually cherish our differences as equally as we cherish what's universal about us. Maybe that might help us get along better. I think there's actually a Hindu teaching that truth is very much beyond any human being, and very much beyond any culture, any religion. It's a little bit like, I guess, if they have the story of the group of blind men who walk into a room, and in the room there's an elephant. Because they're blind, they all go to a particular part of the elephant, and they all come back and talk about it afterwards. And they say, what was in that room? And one says, oh, there was something very long and smooth. And one says, no, what are you talking about? It was very leathery and rough. And one says, no, I have no idea what you mean. It was sort of like this furry thing. It's truth is often like that. Each of our religions holds on to one piece of it. Together, when we share in dialogue what we think as truth, with another person says, but I have another perspective on truth. We can maybe see a little image of what the elephant is in the room. But if we try to say, my version is correct, my ideas are the correct one, we see only one very narrowly focused kind of idea. So maybe the conversation will work better if we say not what is the same about the three monotheistic religions, about all religions, but maybe if we can live in dialogue, and even in very difficult tension with the fact that we are different. And even so, even being different, we can still find the truth, God's truth, extends beyond our differences.
Thank you very much. Does any of the other experts want to take a question? Karen, again?
Yeah, thanks. Not only do we share words and traditions, we share sermon illustrations too. So, thank you. I think one of the reasons there is still potential conflict, particularly between the Abrahamic faiths, is because for many of us, we associate our faith tradition with our identity. It is core to who we are. And so when someone disagrees with that, we can feel as if they are fundamentally disagreeing with who we are. So I don't like you because you don't believe as I do. And that somehow threatens who I am. That can be a source of conflict. I think it takes huge amounts of vulnerability to have that dialogue, to have that conversation, to say, I believe this, what do you believe? Let's learn from those different aspects of truth. Let's share that together. And I think most of the time, humanity in general, whether one comes from a faith perspective or not, I think humanity in general is comfortable with what it knows. So we gravitate to those who are like us. We gravitate to people who share our beliefs. And we can potentially feel threatened by a belief that is other. I think that's a huge source of conflict, is we have to get over our initial knee-jerk reaction to, you are other, I don't like you, I will stick to what I know. As my colleague said, we've all congregated in groups that we came with. We've not initiated, I shall go sit with this person whom I do not know. We've sat where it's safe and comfortable. And I think on a grander scale, on a sort of global scale, we tend to stick with what we know. And those who express something different are alien and a bit scary, or they can be.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is, do I have to have a religion to go to heaven? Who wants to take that?
I don't think so. We don't have to, because how do you define religion? It's all essence. So it all depends how one understands religion. And I think a person, as I said, I'll go back to what I said about atheists and agnostics. And I think I wouldn't like to reduce religion to morality, but I wouldn't like to say that religious people are more moral than atheists and agnostics, or vice versa. So I think anyone who's able to lead a life where he or she can show compassion, love, and work for justice and peace, I think he's on the road to heaven. I don't know how one defines heaven, but I would want to imagine that the person is en route to heaven.
Yep.
I think I find this a very interesting question, something we've had discussions about. And I think, well, from Baha'i point of view, hell and heaven are not a place, and I think probably many of the scholars will agree, or the people in the audience will agree. But for me, this problem is resolved through this dilemma. Baha'is would say the next world is a spiritual world, where depending on your achievements in spiritual development, your contribution to this world, if you like, your life in this world, you're up the ladder a certain amount, if you like. There are different, if you like, levels of spirituality in the next life, not a place called hell and a place called heaven. And that heaven is nearness and love of that creator, and hell is remoteness, and if you like, further away from that, being further away from that love. So if you take it in this kind of progressive, if you like, way, that next world is not a place that you burn or not, you go to this or that, then life in this life becomes more easy to sort of fit into that. And I'd like to, before I go on, to say that from a Baha'i point of view, hell and heaven is one of those topics that is very difficult for us, or next life is very difficult for us to fully comprehend in this life. And therefore every messenger has given us a portion according to our understanding at the time that they came. So this is, if you like, the Baha'i way of looking at it. So going back to the question, then actually the essence of your spiritual progress and therefore your next life's position, if that in that spiritual world, if you like, is as much, if not more, dependent on your behavior and your life in this world. And your mere sort of saying that you believe in one thing or another, or God or something, is, if you like, part of that equation. And you may be a great believer, but actually, doing a lot of things that would be contrary to the will of God and want of God. And we can see that in history. People who supposedly are religious leaders have committed great crimes of humanity. So it's not about what you believe entirely. That's part of the equation. And more important is action and, as you say, service to humanity, the way you lead your everyday life and what you do in the decisions you make every day. So from a Baha'i point of view, one, there is no hell and heaven as such. Secondly, everybody has a place in that world depending on your achievement and growth in this world spiritually, and that doesn't need necessarily recognition in God.
Thank you very much. The next question is regarding morality. Killing life is the worst thing in Islam, is it not? If so, is killing an acceptable form of punishment? And that is directed at Campusalam.
The Quran makes it very clear, where God says that saving the life of a single human being is like saving the life of the whole of humanity. And taking the life of a single human being is like taking the life of the whole of humanity. And if we try to examine this particular quote within the Quran with some deep understanding and deep thinking, we come to the conclusion that in reality this is very, very true. In that when the very first human being is killed out of, and that particular human being is completely innocent, that then legitimizes killing of more human beings. And that then opens the road to killing of more human beings, which is contrary to the teachings of Islam. Now, in certain situations where there is a problem of law and order, and the state is allowed to take revenge from that particular human being who's killed somebody else, or who's robbed somebody, or who's hurt somebody in some kind of way which elicits a crime. There, the state can take action against that particular individual. But anything more than that is contrary to the teaching of Islam.
Would anyone else like to take that question? I know it's phrased for Islam, but I think broadly take it for any faith.
I think most Eastern traditions, including Buddhism and Hinduism and Jainism, they put a great value on what is called ahimsa. That is literally means non-injury or non-killing. I think there are exceptions to the rule. For example, in defense of one's own life, it's possible in certain circumstances that one could kill, but that's more an exception rather than a rule. And sometimes the exception can be treated as a norm, and that would happen, I would imagine, with any given tradition. In short, that's all.
Okay, thank you very much. This next question is first for Cara. If you try to convert others, or believe that if people followed your religion they would be better, how can you genuinely do interfaith with no ulterior motive? I'll just read that again because that was quite long. If you try to convert others, or believe that if people followed your religion they would be better, how can you genuinely do interfaith with no ulterior motive?
Okay.
I'm reading from the piece of paper.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for the question. Conversion is such an interesting thing in Christianity in particular, because Christianity is intended to be a converting religion. Theoretically, no one's born a Christian. At some point, somewhere along the line, one makes a choice whether or not to be a Christian. So the question about conversion is somehow central to Christianity. How one then decides to engage with the topic of conversion is an important question. If I meet people and want to say to them, let me tell you about Jesus, which I can do really well in my Southern American accent, let me tell you really, really well. If I meet people and say that, that's one way of bringing people to conversion, another way to perhaps give witness to the God I know, which is how I define conversion. I give witness to what I know, is to engage in honest, true dialogue. There was a question about not seeing other religions as equal. How could I possibly not see someone as equal when I know that they are created by God and they have the stamp of God on them? They are God's handiwork. So of course, all are equal in the eyes of God. Therefore, genuine interfaith dialogue comes first with humility. The awareness that I do not have all the answers. I do not have the full scope of truth. From that humility comes a willingness to be vulnerable. I will learn from you. I will put myself in a place where you can say things that challenge me. I will trust in what I know, but I will be willing to be challenged and developed by what you know as well. So I don't think that one can approach genuine religious dialogue with the intent of conversion. Sorry, one can approach genuine interfaith dialogue with the intent of conversion. I think it requires honesty about who we are. So I cannot approach an interfaith dialogue saying I will be anything other than a Protestant Christian. That's who I am. But from that honesty then comes dialogue and learning from each other. I would hope that in true interfaith dialogue, it's never about conversion, but about mutual learning, mutual growth, celebrating both our similarities and our differences, so that perhaps somewhere we get a bigger picture of truth.
Thank you very much. And secondly, to Afzal, please. The same question.
I think, in particular, Islam focuses on the idea that there is no compulsion in religion. Nobody can force you to convert. It's entirely your forte. It's entirely your choice. But nevertheless, as a Muslim, it's my duty in order to portray Islam as best as I can to you. And thereafter, it's your choice. If you wish to become Muslim, you can convert. If you don't wish to become Muslim, you don't need to convert. As far as interfaith dialogue is concerned, I think that's very important, because what interfaith dialogue allows us to do is it allows us to see our similarities and our differences. And it also allows us to kind of differ with respect amongst ourselves and live as good human beings and contribute to society.
Okay.
Can I just...
You can.
Thank you for your contribution. And I agree with what both of you said. That's not at all an issue here. Historically, conversion has posed problems. That is something in interfaith discussions, perhaps conversion is not an issue because we are here to learn from the other person. So therefore conversion perhaps to a great extent is out of question. But my friend just now said it is his duty to let the other person know about Islam in the hope that he gets converted and the choice is left to the other person. Here my basic question is this. Having been engaged in interfaith dialogue for the last 25 years of my life here in Britain, my question is, if one were to take that kind of a position, there's an implication that what I hold is absolutely, it's not valued, it doesn't have much value. I would want to begin a dialogue thinking that you have as much value in your tradition as much as I have value. For me, that is not something which I would not want to say to the Muslim or to Buddhist or to Baha'i or to Christian that my faith, I'm offering you my faith here. See for yourself. If you find something interesting, fine. If you do not find anything interesting, that's fine. That means basically the other person's faith is somehow not up to the mark. Somewhere something is lacking in other faith. So how do we, my question here is, how do we tackle that particular issue in our interfaith encounters? Do we go to the other person with the notion that there's something is lacking in the other that I can give? That's my question.
Okay, thank you very much. Will you after
Yeah, and if people want to answer, that's great, yes.
Shall I take this? Yeah, you can respond to that.
In my own opinion, I think that's very logical, in the sense that if I know that there's something which has benefited me, then I should give that out to everybody else. Not thinking that that particular person might not take benefit from this thing, so it's better I just keep this away and keep it to myself. Now that's being very selfish. again, it's really knowledge at the end of the day, and knowledge should be expressed freely and openly. And thereafter, it should be the choice of the person. If they wish to take on that knowledge, and if they wish to take on the belief, fair enough. If they don't, that's also completely sound. It's entirely the decision and the choice of the person.
Can I respond to that?
There will be a chance for dialogue afterwards. I'm going to just move on to the final question. The final question is belief in life after death just a comforting fairy tale? You've kept quiet again, do you want to have a go at this one?
Is belief in life after death a comforting fairy tale? I don't know about life after death. I mean, no one's ever come back and told me what it was like there. So it's difficult to say what's going to be. We don't know. That's the scary part about death, probably. That no one ever comes back. It's an end. It's a finish. Religion, at least Judaism, isn't focused so much on what's going to happen afterwards. It's mostly focused on what kind of person are we being today? What are our values? What are our goals? Do we have meaning in our lives? Do we live the life with honesty, with care, with compassion? Another story? A man comes, and he comes to get a job at the farm, and he has only one reference. And it says in his reference, this man sleeps in a storm. Now, the farmer gives his reference, doesn't think much of this reference, but he doesn't have much choice. It's in the middle of nowhere. He hires the guy. And lo and behold, there's a storm that comes through. And the farmer jumps out of bed. Oh my goodness, the guy's probably fast asleep. So he runs over to check out the chickens. The chicken coop is all very carefully locked up. And then he runs over to check out the cows. And the cows are all being fed. The storm is raging overhead. The windows are taken care of. The animals are taken care of. The hay is all taken care of. And of course, the man is sleeping. Religion, perhaps, is that kind of life. In this world, there's a storm raging. We need to take care of those elements. Can we take care of what we need to take care of? Have relationships of trust and care. Fill our lives with meaning. And then, at the end of it, when we sleep, when we really go to sleep at the end, we can say, I took care of what I need to take care of in this world. That's all I know. That's all I can think about. Is that a fairy tale? If it is, it's a pretty good one. Maybe people tell stories, after all, and tales, after all. It's a good narrative, isn't it?
Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to take that question? Yep, Axel.
Obviously, with faith comes exactly that. It's faith. Certain parts of the faith can't really be seen. They can't be heard. They can't be felt. But that's part of the package. Part of the package is that you believe that there is a life after death. In saying that, however, an intelligent person, if he believes or she believes in universal morality, what they kind of come to as a conclusion would be that all the suffering on earth and the injustices that are taking place, where might is right as opposed to right is might, is enforced. One day it needs to come to a judgment where there will be justice, and we believe that will ultimately take place in the hereafter, where then people will be destined to eternal bliss or eternal damnation.
Thank you very much. I've just got a few things to say before we head on to the Rosa Parks room. Firstly, has anyone got the registration sheet near them? If anyone hasn't signed the registration sheet, please could you do so? If you wouldn't mind leaving that in the kind of entrance on that table there as people leave. I just want to say another massive thank you to all of our panellists and all of you for coming. And I'm just going to read what's going to happen next. We have got some food available in the Rosa Parks room. There were absolutely loads of questions we didn't get a chance to read out. They are all available in the Rosa Parks room, so if anyone still has anything they want to talk about, then please do go along to the Rosa Parks now after we draw this to a close. And I just want to say a final thank you to the Interfaith Association and Campusalam for organising this event and everyone involved. So thank you very much, and if we could make our way over to the Rosa Parks room and just sign on the corner. Sorry final thing, there are some feedback forms. If you can fill those out. Again, if you leave them at the entrance, that would be much appreciated. Thank you very much. I'll see you in a moment.